the last time we were together, we talked about what to do with the list. The immediate thing you should be doing with that, of course, is saying thank you and getting clear about how you're doing recognition. And we talked a lot about that with lots of different strategies. So we did ask you to look at your list, and we asked you to think about who the donors are on that list. We asked you to contemplate who was new and who was returning and who was increasing, remembering that Pick.Click.Give has 3 main strategies to increase the number of donors in the state of Alaska, to increase the amount of giving in the state of Alaska, and to raise awareness about the power of individual giving in the state of Alaska. So all 3 of those goals. So most likely you're experiencing all of those things. I hope that you are. And so I'm curious, those of you who are on the call last time, or those of you who have taken up our request, what did you learn? What did you learn about your donors? Did you learn that you had more new or more returning? Did you learn that you've got people giving more? What did you learn? Got a chat. Laura says she has more new donors than returning, and an overall decrease of about $2,000. And Laura, have you analyzed why you think that is? Is that a change in your behavior, a change in the way you did outreach, a change in your donors? Have you thought about that? So Laura says she's still in the process of analyzing the data, and I just encourage you all to just really spend some time with that data. The best predictor of future donors are current donors. The goal always in philanthropy, if you're a relationship-based organization and really focused on that donor, the goal is to keep your donors. Retention is really the golden rule. So always has been. It's gotten a lot of coverage lately as if it's a new thought, but it's not a new thought. It's the traditional thinking of development, and I encourage you to all think about how you retain your donors. Such an important conversation, and the way we do that, of course, is to be donor focused and really focus on those relationships. You can spend a lot of time and energy getting one-time donors. It's just not a great strategy to keep going. So you'll get a lot of new donors in Pick.Click.Give. You'll know if you're creating that lovely strategy, if you're keeping them over time. They may not stay through Pick.Click.Give, but they should stay as donors using a variety of methods. Great, so Erin's jumping in here. Nancy says she's still analyzing, and but a good increase in both donors and giving. Erin offers you that thought that got a lot of returning donors and plus people who are giving through other means. That's great. Not a lot of new, and so that's interesting. And again, that kind of, she's also new, so I'm not sure what kind of outreach. And Gail saying it's a status quo for her. So, you know, that's the fun thing about this data, is that everybody's in a different place. I'm sure organizationally you're also in different places. What you have in place structurally, what your recognition process looks like, what your database looks like, all of that stuff. So really thinking about how you're using your tools, what's working, what's not working. It's excellent. So Brian's saying he used a lot of Facebook to drive his conversation and email, and he saw a 35% increase, so that's fantastic. So that's great. You know, this is definitely, we'll talk about this in a minute, but this is definitely one of those moments where your brand new donors are doing an impulse gift, and they're trying you out. You know, this is a little bit like, you know, I'll give a little bit of money and see what happens to me. I'll see if they think that I'm a real person that cares about this cause and this mission. Let me see what that relationship might look like. So this is your chance to really shine and show them that you really care about them. So here's some thoughts, those of you still analyzing your data and thinking about those new donors. I've just created some questions for you. And just giving you some ideas about maybe how to analyze those lists that you've got and how to use that in the database that you've got, whether that's a sophisticated system or not. I think you can all pick some of these questions and get a lot of learning out of it. And I encourage you to use some group learning too. It doesn't just have to be you. It should be I always think of fund development as a team effort. So whoever might be on your team, maybe that's other staff, maybe that's a couple of board members, maybe that's some volunteers, whatever that looks like. But make it a team process, because I think that there's some real richness in thinking about the list more than just for you, regardless of what position you hold in the organization. For existing donors, offering you some thoughts about the kinds of questions you could ask with them as well. You know, I'm a big believer that all of this information helps us plan for the next round, right? Because in the end of the day, our goal is to create an annual giving and all of its giving strategies to create a healthy habit. So what can you learn? How can you keep a habit? How can you keep momentum going? If you're new to the organization, you know, what momentum is, how can you just pick up where others left off and keep that moving forward? So some questions to offer you there. The goal here is, again, for many of you, you know, this is just one piece of your overall donor relationship strategy. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's one strategy, and I absolutely appreciate that. So, you know, the idea in this conversation is really just to focus your strategies, trying to really figure out, right, is your goal for this next cycle to increase new donors, right? So Brian offered, right, he had a lot of increase and, you know, going for that impulse, that emotion, using Facebook, using, right, that social media tool. So is the goal to increase in this cycle new donors? Is it to retain the donors that you have? Is it to get your existing donors to give additional gifts, what I like to call and gifts? They're giving other ways and they're going to use Pick.Click.Give. You know, I think there's no expectation here for any organization of any size that you would have every strategy for every group of people and you would use them all the time in Pick.Click.Give. So the idea here is really to say, like, where do you want to put your energy? Where do you want to put your effort? And place some baseline benchmarks down there so you can see if your efforts really return on your time and energy in the form of relationship and in the form of contributions. Really thinking about, and because again, we measure success in lots of ways. We don't just measure it based on money. So, you know, the science of fundraising tells us some things about how people are motivated to give. And so lots of people are using Pick.Click.Give because as an impulse or an emotional gift. That very first gift that people make is definitely an impulse or an emotional experience for people. So think about why some people use a special event or think about kind of those you know, impulse or emotional gifts after a tragedy or a natural disaster. That impulse that people say, I want to do something, I want to be part of this, I want to participate, I want to feel like I'm in it and I matter and I'm kind of part of a greater good. And Pick.Click.Give can be one of those experiences for people. So that might be the way that you get new donors. In fact, what we know about Pick.Click.Give is it attracts a lot of new donors, and that's fantastic. Great. The question for that then is, how do you keep them? Because subsequent gifts after that are really about habit. Oh, I've picked your organization year after year after year, and Pick.Click.Give, I'll just keep picking you because my experience with you is good. I believe in your mission. I'm connected to your cause. You're saying thank you. I feel connected. I just go straight for you when I look on my list, right? So how do you do that? Or how? And again, maybe this is Pick.Click.Give is just one of the many habits. If you decided that your goal in the next cycle is to help people increase their gift, so they've been giving you $100 over the course of the year, maybe 75 to Pick.Click.Give and 25 somewhere else, and now you'd like them to increase their gift this year using Pick.Click.Give or using another tool, and with Pick.Click.Give in the strategy set, you have to help that be a rational choice for the donor, and it can't be that you need the money. So no crisis calls, that doesn't work. So, because again, those are just impulse, you go back to impulse and emotion. So you want this rational choice about why that donor should increase their gift, what difference does it make. This is where your stories really come into play, really helping and telling and sharing good stories with donors and letting them share great stories with you, helping there be a truly rational reason why they should increase their gift. And again, your need isn't one of them. Your community can have needs, your mission can have needs, your cause can have needs, you as an organization. It's not about you. Money goes through you, not to you. If you want people to use Pick.Click.Give as just, I don't think they would use Pick.Click.Give, frankly, as a major gift, or clearly not an asset gift, because this is not an asset. But that major gift, there are some people who donate their entire dividend to organizations. And that is truly a thoughtful gift. And what the stories that we're hearing about that so far have been really thoughtful stories about families coming together and taking one dividend and deciding where to give it away. So a whole family coming together and saying one of our dividends or the equivalent of one of our dividends will go to an organization or to a handful of organizations. That's a very thoughtful process, and it requires of you as an organization to create thoughtful moments, thoughtful experience, opportunities for people to really come back, slow down, and have those big conversations with organizations. We have seen it. We do know it happens. It's rare, of course, but again, it's about the kind of experience that you want to help create in your community and for your donors. It's very rare that a first-time donor would do that, of course. This is incremental for a donor. You know, I start as a first-time donor, then I get to be a habit, then I increase my gift, and I get thoughtful, and then I leave in my will, right? So that is about the maturation of a donor as much as it's about the maturation of your organization's ability to have these different kinds of conversations. So what you should be thinking about really is that if you only have one message, you just put one message out on Facebook, or you put one message out in, you know, in a newsletter, or one message out on the postcard, you're going to get one kind of response. Because these are different donors that need different kinds of messages with different thought processes behind them. So if you learn anything through any fundraising class you ever take, it's that there is no such thing as one size fits all. You can't just use one strategy and hope it works for everybody. That's not how the science goes. It's also not how, because it's not how we as people think. So really thinking about what are your goals, where do you want to focus, what kind of capacity do you have in your organization, and where do you want to put your energy. I encourage you to, again, to put a baseline out there so that you can see if your efforts are giving that kind of return. So again, the more successful that you are, the more focused you are, the more successful you'll be. And you know, this is just that reminder about that no one size fits all. So again, if you can start to really identify and get connected with the right donor at the right time in the right way, then you're going to have better return. So you can build on that 35% increase, yay, and see if you can get it to something different. You can, okay, we've got a great strategy for new donors. We'll just keep doing that strategy. We'll keep doing that because we know that generates new donors. Great. Now, since we've got a process for that, what kind of process can we overlay on that for the next kind of donor? So we've got one for this kind. Now what can we do for this kind? While not letting go of the first set of strategies. So this is a layering approach that you can offer in your organization if you have the capacity. So Laura, Laura is making a comment about the 7% admin fee. Let me be clear that that all Pick.Click.Give donations are 100% of their gift is going directly to you. That admin fee is the cost of you doing business. That's the cheapest, probably the cheapest fundraising strategy you'll ever find. You know, direct mail and all of the things that you put out, not to mention if you're doing special events, which are probably costing you 50 cents for every dollar that you raise, so 50% overhead on most special events. $1.25 for every piece of direct mail you put out for every dollar you raise. So that 7%, frankly, is a pretty great deal. And I really want to encourage you to help have those conversations with donors that it's not coming from them, it's the organization's participation to help fund the overall communication strategies for the state of Alaska. So helping the donor know that it's still 100% of their gift is still going to you as an organization. This is just the cost of doing business, and it's not the donor that's paying for that, it's you. So I think really helping, there's a lot of miscommunication around that 7%. I think we can all be really good ambassadors about that. That's a very low overhead rate for any sort of strategy. If there's anyone out there that thinks fundraising doesn't cost money, somebody's been not telling you the truth, so, because you're all getting paid. So, so fundraising costs money, right? So I think we can all be great we can all be great ambassadors to that conversation. And I think that Jason Grant, who's not on our call at the moment, but he's the new Pick.Click.Give manager. I do believe he's coming out with some talking points about that if you're concerned, that you can use on your website and things like that. And if not, I'm sure if you asked him, he would do that as well. Yeah. And again, you know, helping people understand that return on investment. You know, this can be, people can kind of glaze over and go, oh, I don't really want to hear about all that stuff. But I think there's some pretty simple messages that we can all deliver. I appreciate you bringing that up, Laura. I think it's really important. We have to keep talking about it because it's definitely new for people. You know, just for those of you who are also new to Pick.Click.Give, it's a good reminder that up until this point, organizations like the Rasmussen Foundation, you know, have been, and many corporate funders after them, and organizations like Foraker and United Way and the Community Foundation, you know, we've all been pitching in to make this statewide campaign work. And at some point, right, you just have to ask the nonprofits who are participating to participate. So this is really just an ongoing sustainability, financial sustainability conversation about how we all make this work together, rather than just relying on Rasmussen, who's clearly given millions and millions of dollars to make this program work. So again, just really thinking about that. And Laura, I see your agreement about the talking points. I will make sure I check back with Jason. I'm sorry he's not on this call, but I will find out where they are with that, because I know that was a strategy that they were talking about. So we'll make sure we get that out. So someone is asking if we should be consistent and share that message with donors. I think that, you know, certainly in that myth-busting category, there's no harm in having that conversation. You know, and again, as long as you're framing it in that positive space, like that's the lowest overhead for any fundraising effort you'll probably ever put out. Even a you know, a capital campaign in which the dollars are huge. You know, usually a capital campaign's got a 10% overhead for every dollar you raise. So, you know, I think this is a really affordable strategy to grow individual philanthropy in this whole state of Alaska. So, absolutely, I don't see any harm in having a conversation about that unless you feel like you're going to confuse your public. Yeah, and you can all still go out with the message that 100% of your gift is still going to support the organization, because that's still true. Because I imagine that you pick up your admin fee from a lot of different places. You're not just picking it up from this donation. All right, well, let's keep moving here. So last time we looked at this is my how I think about relationship-based fundraising. Can't really be in a conversation with Foraker for more than a couple minutes about fundraising without having this conversation. And last time we talked, we were really focused on that 30% of your time going towards recognition and reporting back to the donor, helping them build trust, helping them get connected, helping them feel like their gift mattered and what difference does it make, and telling great stories and inviting them to tell their stories. And where we are now in this conversation is really back up at the top here in that 30% of your time on your research, really looking at your list, really getting clear, looking at your constituency, and then that 30% of your time really building a relationship, getting connected, really figuring out where that donor is, and moving beyond just believing that you're only talking to them because they have money and they want to give it. So when we think more about that, right, then when we talk about getting a plan to be in relationship with these donors so that they stick with us through thick and through thin, we want to talk about where the donor is, right? So getting rid of that one-size-fits-all approach and thinking about how do we match the right person at the right time for the right amount of money in the right way for the right reason. And the way at this moment in this conversation is Pick.Click.Give is the way. It does mean that not every donor, you know, it's the right message for the right donor. Not all your donors are using Pick.Click.Give. That wouldn't be appropriate necessarily. That's not what they want to do. They're doing lots of things. But maybe more of your donors would do that. If your goal was to increase the amount of giving from your donors, you could have them use Pick.Click.Give as an and strategy. Again, it might be the right way for that brand new donor. Really thinking about how you frame your plan based on the donor's perspective and your ability to have that great follow-through. So in the end, right, relationship building is about listening as much as it's about putting information out. I actually think it's probably more listening than putting information out, but you definitely need to put some information out there so that you can then encourage the opportunity to really hear people and listen back. So it's definitely mutually beneficial. It's two-way communication. And when we think about that, of course, we want you to think about what your message looks like. I think one of the challenges that we often face in our nonprofit communication is that we get so excited that we're talking to someone that we offer them 6 messages all at the same time. Hey, I'd like you to give to Pick.Click.Give, and I'd like you to bring a canned food to the next thing, and I'd like you to drop off some clothes, and I'd like you to write a $100,000 check, and I'd like you to be on our board, and right, oh yay, right, and that's just so much, right? It's just too many messages. So really being clear on your Pick.Click.Give messages, that they are Pick.Click.Give messages. Know who you're talking to. Don't talk to a donor who's been with you for 30 years like they're a brand new donor. Really trying to get clear with them, really creating those opportunities for them to say, hey, I'm part of this larger experience. I think, I'm part of growing philanthropy in the state. I'm part of supporting whichever cause you're offering and they're connecting to, really helping them feel that. My favorite thinking at the moment, one of my favorite little quips at the moment is I gathered from the folks over at First Alaskans, and they're very fond of saying the shortest distance between two people is a story. And certainly at Foraker, we are all about story, and had a big, huge summit about creating story and trying to help nonprofits tell better stories. And just encouraging you to think about at this stage in the game, what is your story? What's the story that you want to put out there about Pick.Click.Give? Maybe you have more than one story. Maybe you have a story that has different paths for different donors, different nuance to them. But what's your story? How are you going to share that story? And then what's your donor story? Why do they give? Why do they care? What difference does it make to them? How do they want to connect? How do they want to be communicated to? So really creating a lots more opportunities to hear what their story is, not just put your story out. But the way to do that is to put your story out and then invite theirs back. And I really, again, just encourage you to create opportunities to do that. And in the end, many of you are, no staff or low staff. Many of you don't have huge board participation or lots of volunteers. So I really just want, the goal here is not a ton of communication, just consistent communication. If you don't have the ability to have, to have good follow through, just do a little, but do it really well. And that's better than a lot poorly. So really thinking about what can you really put out there consistently and really do an excellent job at, reflect your organizational values around, and have that good follow through, that you can slow down long enough to really hear from your donor. In general, when we're crafting our messages, we're thinking about how we want to communicate differently, again, to different donor groups. And, I'm really thinking about, the donor who's the very first time donor with you, right? That's a trust building exercise for them. They're putting their toe in the water with you. They're really thinking very subconsciously, frankly, about, what does it mean to give to you, and how will they be treated, and what does that look like? Again, if I'm a $1 million donor to you, I probably have a lot more questions than if I'm a $5 donor to you. I have probably less questions, and I need less understanding of how it all works. But I still need to hear from you. I still need to be appreciated. I still need that consistency from you. But again, you kind of ramp it up with as the donor connects more to you, either in number of years or in number of dollars. So trying to help you think about what messages where you might start to create your messages, thinking about, so thinking about who those donors are. So as you're looking at your list and getting a sense of them, Brian's got 35% new donors there participating. What did you figure out about them, right? So you pushed information out on Facebook and through your other social media platforms. And what did you hear back from them? What do you know about them, right? So you start with them, and then what do you know? How can you get to know them better? How can you get more connected? And then really, who's the right messenger, right? So you maybe you started out using your own personal Facebook page, and then you moved on to using your organization's page. Which way worked better for you, or how did you connect those things? Maybe you were communicating by email. Maybe you had everybody on staff was using email to connect with donors in different ways because they were the right messenger. Maybe you created a nice little tagline at the bottom of your signature line, and you gave that to all your board members, and then they became messengers for you. Well, who do you want them to be? Are they messengers generically? Are they messengers for specific people? And what's the right way? So just use an email example. That's so easy. All of us can do that. Maybe some of us need a little bit more personal touch. Certainly, if you're asking someone to donate their whole PFD, that's going to be a lot different message than if you're asking them to participate with you as a new donor or in a smaller way. So really just thinking about that, who's delivering that message and what way do you want them to deliver really matches what kind of call to action you're really asking from that donor. Donors can, the notion of relationship building, of course, is that the idea is that we are looking for in relationship either a physical connection or an emotional connection. Again, that emotional connection can be, the use of story is fantastic. You know, not, you know, again, thinking about how you are strategic about matching up those different strategies and thinking about how you match that to the right group of folks. So some signs of that emotional involvement, which is often harder to measure than, of course, a physical. You can just check it off the list. You know, you can throw a Pick.Click.Give donor party and see how many come. That would be fabulous. Invite everyone who participated and throw a little thank you gathering. Invite them to, you know, a little 5-minute coffee moment at the board meeting, and so you can all say thank you. You know, that's easy to measure. Harder to measure emotional involvement from a group of people that, you know, you haven't seen. They went online, they picked, clicked, and gave, and you know, you might not even know them. So how do you know that they're emotionally involved? And, you know, here are some ways, right, that they start to, you start to understand what their interests are. So you start to say, like, oh, look at that. Well, they picked us. Well, that must mean that they're interested in art, dogs, cats, whatever your mission is, right? That they start to, if you are, you know, tracking their comments, their feedback, you're creating some space for them virtually, then you can start to see if they're starting to sound a little bit like you. They're starting to reflect the core values of the organization. But the other way that you might think is, you know, are these the folks who are asking lots of questions? Are these the people asking the question about 7%? They're telling you they're invested. Are they making comments? Are they offering suggestions about how you might do this differently? Are they giving you kudos, right? Those folks who you know, care enough to connect with you are telling you something about their interest and their engagement. I just brainstormed kind of a huge long list of all these different ways that you might engage your donor. I have zero expectation you would do all of these things, of course. You want to do the right thing at the right time with the right donor. But you see that some of these things are easy, they don't cost a lot of money, they don't take a lot of time, and some of them, of course, are quite intensive and take a lot of time. What I hope you can see from scanning this list is that there are some things that you're already doing. You just may not have incorporated your Pick.Click.Give donors into the invitation to participate. So here's an opportunity to do that. I think one of the best strategies around relationship building is to remember that donors want to connect to mission. So if you're already doing a mission activity, the goal is just to bring people along. I call it the invite and acknowledge strategy, just inviting people to participate in things that are already happening and then acknowledging their participation in that effort. So saying thank you. Even if they don't come, it's okay. It's okay if they don't come. The fact that you invited them, that you remembered who they were, that you didn't just think of them as a walking checkbook, that's really what makes a difference. Well, there's a good many of you on this call that have the opportunity to actually invite donors into your spaces. Not all of us have that. If I invited donors into Foraker, I'm not quite sure on a daily basis what they'd really see or whether they really thought that was going to be very entertaining for them. And not always appropriate, so that might not work. And I see some of you on this call, you know, you have good confidentiality stuff going on in your organization. You're working with kids or you're working with adults in a setting, and so it's just not appropriate to have donors in that space. But what does it mean to then engage your donors when they can't come into your space? And for there's definitely people on this call, you could absolutely bring donors into your space. So what does that mean for you? How do you do that? How do you wrap Pick.Click.Give donors into that connection, making them feel immediately part of your family? That's the goal here. So I did plot out just an example of what this whole cycle might look like. You know, it's just one example, and it's certainly not going to be the way you do it. I just wanted you to see kind of how I might frame up this conversation if I were taking a new donor through the process of Pick.Click.Give. So we've talked, and this is a little summary of all the things we've been saying so far. So that notion of I'd spend 30% of my time in research, I'd be looking at the database, I would be, you know, searching it and adding to it. I'd be connecting with my internal team about who knows these donors and what can we know about them and what do they have in common. I may be grouping them up so that I could start to create a plan about the different groups that I have, those retention ones, those new ones, things like that. Good. Those of you who aren't signed into the chat, I'll just read this for you. So it says at 49 Rise, we provide some value-added events like member salons or members' homes or contacting with folks. We're always looking for ways to give donors that little extra without causing a lot more work for staff. Yay, I love that. So taking your mission and weaving it into your fundraising, awesome strategy. Not trying to create something new, doing what you do best and bringing donors into it. Remember, donors are giving because they care about mission. So starting with your mission first, middle, and last, always a great strategy. Erin, thanks for being brave and typing that in. It's a great example for all of us. Really appreciate that. So back to my example here. So, you know, the goal in research, really just trying to get a plan and figuring out what I can do that's manageable, that I can have follow through around, that I can really track and see if those efforts are really working. Then I'll spend 30% of my time doing relationship building. I'm going to send that thank you note immediately, which helps right away. I might share a story in the next newsletter about the difference that those Pick.Click.Give donations make. I want to use a story that speaks from my heart and connects my head. I want to tell a real story, not a lot of data, a lot of what we say, stories, not statistics, feelings, not facts. It's not that I don't care about the facts and the statistics, but oh my goodness, we can disconnect people by just throwing a lot of numbers at them. So really tell a good story, make it truthful, make it factual, but don't overdo the facts so that you disconnect people. Always try to remember to connect that heart piece too. Think about a really great book that you're reading and know, right, it's not just full of facts, right? Ooh, nice. Nancy just offered that they offer the VIP tour for Pick.Click.Give donors. Love that. Love that. Those of you who have that opportunity, is great. So we're going to welcome people, welcome them we're going to offer an opportunity to connect. So Nancy and Erin have both offered some things there. I like the low cost or no cost, and of course everything costs money because you're all paid and we're all working, right? But that notion of that low cost effort, even, you know, again, inviting folks to a meeting that's already going to occur with your board or things like that. Something fun, right? A little bit of chocolate might be involved. That's great. And welcome them. And then those that didn't come, send them a recap of what happened at that. You know, show them some fun pictures, send them a fun little email or a little message if you can. And then maybe even that you'll send them a little 3 or 5 question survey and get to know them a little bit. Will they all answer? Of course not, but some of them will, and they're going to tell you some stuff that you can use as you're thinking about these different groups of people. So of course we know giving starts with Pick.Click.Give on January 1st, runs all the way to the end of March, but we really need to be creating that impulse, starting to get people excited about it, really, you know, from November and December, because it's an amazing number of people in Alaska that file for their PFD on January 1. It's just a phenomenal group of people in that first week who are making those choices. So you can't wait till January 1 to do it. You got to do it in December. You got to, you know, work it out, and then keep up the momentum all the way through March. But you're really gonna, if you wait till in January, you're gonna miss those first set of that major amount of Alaskans who are filing in the beginning of the first 2 weeks. And then the cycle keeps going. Remember that we're following up. Of course, our strategy here, right, is that you know, there's always this delay. So do everything you can to keep that communication going. You may even create special recognition plans, and we talked about those different strategies for recognition in that last call. I know Jason was planning on posting that, and if he hasn't done it already, he will do that soon. So this is just one example. My goal for you is just to say, you know, this doesn't have to be overly complicated. You just have to have a plan. Any plan would be better than no plan. And again, maybe you're just going to pick new donors, or you're going to pick the existing donors, or however you're going to do it. Just commit yourself to getting focused and trying it out. In the end of the day, the goal is to keep your focus on the donor, keep investing in that relationship, keep finding new ways to engage and connect and involve and inform them. And one of the ways that you can do that is just providing great follow-through with them. If you're getting questions about that 7%, and you're getting questions about how their gift has been, what their gift is going to, make sure you're following up with them and follow through with that donor. I do believe this is an organizational culture experience, right? We often call this part, you know, this culture of philanthropy, this notion of philanthropy means love of humankind, right? So what does it mean to create a culture in your organization that truly values the person and their commitment to the organization and all the ways that they do that? So Nancy's asking a great question. What's the best way to send a year-end appeal without blurring the request for Pick.Click.Give? And so I guess the answer to that question first, I have a question for that question first, which is, who are the annual appeals going to? Are they going to everybody? Or do you want some, are they just going to renewing donors? Are they going to new donors? Like who is it going to? Because that really then says what the strategy needs to be in terms of the messaging. Maybe if it's going to Pick.Click.Give donors, then we're going to just use the annual appeal to ask them, because Pick.Click.Give is just another way to receive an annual gift. So, you know, those are just different strategies. One's a piece of mail, one's Pick.Click.Give. They all do the same thing. They're just tools in the toolbox of annual giving. So you always got to have to go back to the donor. Don't start with the strategy or the tactic of asking. Start with the donor. And then if you know the donor group, which is the thing that we've been talking about today, then you can match the right strategy for them. You know, at the end of the day, if the annual appeal makes $3 less, but Pick.Click.Give makes $3 more, it's the same conversation, because those are just tools in the toolbox of annual giving. It's just so I would say, you know, the goal of annual giving is X number of dollars. Here are the 5 strategies we use to do it. We use mail, we use Pick.Click.Give, we use a special event, we use face-to-face solicitation. You know, those are all tools in the toolbox. So I can't really answer that question unless I know who the donor group is, because at least in my brain, I'm not starting with the strategy, I'm starting with the donor. So yeah, I mean, I just encourage you to start with the donor, work your way out, and you can't go wrong here. Absolutely. Okay, so in the end, final thought of the day, just being willing to commit your organization to that donor service. So I am happy it's right at the time here. I'm totally happy to stay, answer more questions. I'm so interested in what you're finding out from your list. I hope you'll share. Nancy, if I didn't quite answer your question, I'm happy to answer it more. I am happy to stay on the call and take questions. I'm sorry that the voice isn't working, but I'm happy to take your questions over the chat bar. Those of you that need to go, I absolutely appreciate your time. I wish you all the best. And I hope you'll stay tuned for the next in the series of Pick.Click.Give calls. There's some great things coming up.